So to start, we're going to first hear a keynote speech from Kelsey Leonard. So please, Kelsey, come on stage. And Kelsey Leonard, Dr. Kelsey Leonard. So I didn't think about the jingle. But Kelsey Leonard holds a research chair in indigenous waters, climate, and sustainability at the University of Waterloo. And I will leave you and make your keynote speech. Thank you,
so
Kelsey.
much. Welcome, everyone. I think we're waiting for some slides. Let's see. Oh. There we are. Akwe Wanikasek. Hello, good day, everyone. My name is Dr. Kelsey Leonard, and I introduced myself in my Shinnecock language. For those of you, and I think as a human species, we're a little challenged with geography. So if you are unfamiliar with my nation, we are located on the east end of what's currently known as Long Island, New York. What you see here pictured in the map is the eastern portion of the island. It's called Long Island for a reason. It's pretty long. But these are our ancestral territories and where we still remain. We're very fortunate as an indigenous nation to have never been removed from our ancestral homelands. However, they have been severely diminished due to colonization. But you may be asking yourselves, as many people ask me, why did you become a water scientist? Well, Shinnecock in our language means people of the stony shore. And I think my ancestors had a really good, fortuitous idea of what it means to be a good human being in the part of the world that I'm from. It means to protect the shore. It means to protect water. And that's what we do as a coastal First Nation located along the Atlantic shores. So today, though, I want to share with you a solution to our pressing climate crisis. But before we can understand the climate crisis, we have to acknowledge that the climate crisis is a human crisis. This myth of scarcity being solely driven by the natural world removes our responsibility and culpability as a human species in the choices that we make every day that damage our planet. So what that calls for is a reform of our relationship to nature and the natural world and our planet. I love the work, as you're seeing here on the screen, of Anishinaabe scholar Dr. Robin Wall-Kimmerer, who in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, says, knowing that you love the earth changes you. It activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel that the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street to a sacred bond. And ultimately, that is what we are trying to restore. We are trying to restore our connection to nature. Because unfortunately, for so many of us among humanity and human society, we have become disconnected from nature, from our environment, and from water. How many of you in this room have a child that was born this year? Raise your hand. Okay, we've had a few. A grandchild? A few. A niece, a nephew? A few. A friend who had a baby this year? Okay, there we go, everybody in the room. See, if we don't act now, under current climate projections, children born this year, in their lifetime, will see cities like New York and Miami underwater. We are seeing increasing tornadoes, droughts, wildfires. For the first time in my lifetime, in my home this past summer on Long Island, we were surrounded by a cloud of orange smoke from wildfires originating out of northern Canada. We are in crisis. So maybe this idea of the climate crisis and sea level rise still hasn't persuaded you. Well, what's wrong with our current status quo, keeping everything as it is? According to the World Wildlife Fund, in 2020, we have seen a loss of nearly 2/3 of the world's biodiversity. And pertinent to today's topic, the most dramatic decline of that biodiversity has been in freshwater ecosystems. What we are seeing in our society today are laws that legalize the destruction of nature. See, we need a legal reform in such a manner that we start to diminish this idea of human superiority over nature and recognize that we need to become good stewards again. So that calls for change. It calls for thinking about innovation and solutions and reimagining what a legal ethic could look like that allows for this type of fundamental shift. So here's what that could look like. A new generation of earth lawyers fighting for the rights of nature. You may be asking yourself, what's an earth lawyer? Well, a recent textbook published in 2020 on the topic of earth law says that earth law is often sometimes called ecocentric law. You might have heard it called eco-jurisprudence. It's an emerging body of law for protecting, restoring, and stabilizing the functional interdependency of Earth's life and life support systems. Sounds pretty good to me. So when I talk to people about earth law, I often say it is like a tree. There's current branches on it. There will be branches that will fall off, and there will be new branches that will grow, probably from some of you in this room, thinking of new, innovative legal ideas. But for right now, we have branches like rights of nature, the crime of ecocide, animal rights, rights of future generations, indigenous law, human environmental rights like the human right to water, atmospheric trust litigation, guardianship of nature, and so many more that don't fit on the slide. Ultimately, we are at a precipice, a time for change, a time when we can imagine something different in the way our legal systems operate, because so far, they're not doing what we need them to do to protect the planet. So it begs a question. Who is justice for? Humanity alone? Well, we kind of already have a precedent for this transformation. We recognize the legal personality of corporations, some of the ones on the screen here. So why not the Great Lakes? Why not the Mississippi River? Why not the River Seine? Why not the many waterways around our planet that we all depend upon to live healthy lives? So the question then becomes, what are each of you going to do about it? What are you going to do for those children that were born this year? Well, I hope you might consider becoming a part of a global movement where we've seen the rights of rivers recognized in Aotearoa, New Zealand with the Whanganui River, where we've seen rivers recognized all around the world through, and also other forms of natural entities, through constitutional amendments, court decisions, local ordinances, indigenous law. And so, excuse me, you might see this in terms of Ecuador, who did a constitutional amendment. You might also have your local city or township pass a resolution. You might appeal directly to justices through amicus briefs, or you might create your own replicable models like the Declaration of Rights of Rivers. So in Canada, where I'm based currently, we had our first river recognized in 2021. It was the Magpie River, a joint initiative by the Innu First Nation, largely led by youth and female-identifying youth. And it was in conjunction with local Quebecois municipalities. So it was a co-governance arrangement and really showed how we have to build these solutions collaboratively across communities. So under the Universal Declaration of River Rights that was put forward, there are these ideas of how do we actually go about protecting water? Well, our status quo has led it so that rivers are over-diverted, that they only protect navigable waters in many parts of the world. Look up that definition. It's a lot of legalese embedded in there. They're often prone to destructive dams, and they often are seen as property. Rivers are seen as property. And so this reform, this transformation, is really trying to dismantle this idea of the natural world being property that can be owned and therefore degraded by humanity. So when we think of rights of rivers, we say that rivers have a right to flow. We say that it should ensure the health of the entire watershed, really having a holistic approach. We say that dams are discouraged or prohibited. And we also say that rivers are persons in the sense that they have standing to be heard in a court of law, just like a corporation. It's not that hard. And we're seeing successes all around the world happening every day. Just last week, colleagues who I work with at the Earth Law Center and international rivers associations around the world, as well as local indigenous river guardians, saw the first legal recognition of a river in Peru. Thank you. I often get the question, well, who gets to speak for the river? And it needs to be localized and context-specific. But this case out of Peru shows it's possible and shows what it looks like to do that with attention to cultural authenticity and to indigenous rights and to the landscape and or waterscape of the country and the unique background that it may have. See, in this case, indigenous rights were restored and upheld, and indigenous river guardians who fought to have the river protected now also get to be its voice. So, we don't have enough time today for me to tell you all of the thousands of initiatives around the world that are working to protect our planet through the recognition of rights of nature, of rights of future generations, of right to a healthy environment. So my colleagues and I tried to make it a little bit easy for you. We created something called the Eco-Jurisprudence Monitor. You can scan the QR code here, and you can search for these initiatives by your political affiliation, maybe country. So you could look for things that are based out of Europe, based out of France, based out of the United States, based out of Peru. But we also made it so that you can look through an ecological lens. You can identify all of the oceans that have been protected, the mountains, the rivers, the lakes. And so it's a really unique tool to build your foundational knowledge, because ultimately, if we're creating a new generation of Earth lawyers and Earth citizens, we need to do a little bit of heart work to learn. So this is what the monitor looks like, in case you're curious. Then, I also want to leave you with other tools. As I mentioned earlier, Earth Law Center, one of the key pivotal actors in that rights of river recognition in Peru, has established what is called the Earth Law Portal. You can also scan this here. It's kind of like Legal Zoom for the planet. You get to go here, and there are downloadable templates for different jurisdictions and different uses. And really, we've done a lot of the work for you. But we also hope that you will customize it and make it localized and specific to your home community and what works for you. All of what I've shared with you today is a part of a global movement. There are global change makers, just like some of the change makers here today, who are making this a reality. From pioneers to the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, to Indigenous Environmental Network, to movement rights. And you can also see a timeline of much of this work through the UN Harmony with Nature program. And if you want to support this work and learn more about this work, excuse me, you can follow up with the Earth Law Center by going to this QR code. Because ultimately, when I'm thinking about what I see here over the course of the next few days, a lot of talk about economic redistribution, about financialization, about the way in which our economies interact with nature. And what I believe also needs to happen in terms of this transformative shift in the legal system is a redistribution of wealth to grassroots organizations who are actually doing this work, to be able to invest in the planet. So you can learn more about that here at Earth Law Center. ultimately, what I want to leave you with today, clean water, the desire for clean water, blockading, protesting, putting bodies on the line for clean water is not terrorism. Poisoning the water of indigenous peoples, the water of local communities, that is an act of terrorism. Every human being and non-human being on this planet that depends on water and the water itself deserves to be healthy. See, healthy water is healthy planet, is healthy people. And ultimately, if we're going to restore that relationship, that connection to nature, we need to operate from an ethic of love. And that means throwing out the myth of objectivity. It means scientists actually embracing emotional stature and leading with love. Ultimately, Earth law is about recognizing, honoring, and protecting nature's inherent right to exist, thrive, and evolve. And hopefully together, that means that we can build a future in which humans and nature flourish. Tabutni, thank you so much.